And we're live with Stacey Brown Randall. She is going to share with us how to get referrals without begging for them, without asking for them, without feeling awkward during the referral process. That's what today's show is all about. She's right here next to me today. Stacey, it's good to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mitch. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. You know, one of the most important things we ever did in our law firm was focus on the referral approach to bringing in new clients, to bringing in new business to the firm. And that's why when Joey Vitale, thank you, Joey, introduced the two of us, I needed to reach out and make this happen. Not only because of live video and the social media platforms, everyone, but for what some of us are doing over on Clubhouse. Okay, Clubhouse, you guys are going to hear about why I think referrals are so important over on the platform. And I'm kind of poking Stacey in the side a little bit because I was just telling her about how great Clubhouse is. But yes, it's another thing that we need to put on our list, and it does take up time. Stacey Brown Randall teaches small business owners, solopreneurs, and entrepreneurs how to generate referrals without asking, without, in your terminology, without manipulation, and in a authentic way, and not in an inauthentic way. Wow, that was a mouthful for me. I need another cup of coffee, so sorry about that. Our courts are closed right now in California, Stacey, so we don't have to bring our A game each and every day. I kind of like it a little bit. It's kind of fun and relaxing, but it allows us to really tap into social media, you know, to work on the referral aspect of what we're doing. What got you interested in using referrals to build business, to build our brands? And where would you like to start today, especially taking into consideration most of our audience is via live video?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I wish, Mitch, that I could tell you that I woke up one day and had a stroke of brilliance and like the genius moment just came to me and said, hey, I'm going to teach people how to get referrals without asking. I mean, that would be pretty amazing if that were my story. That's not how it worked at all. Unfortunately, I had to learn the process that I now teach, and I'm teaching my methodology now. We added our 9th and 10th country around the world last year during COVID, but it's really interesting in terms of what I teach people to do now. I had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks. Like I had a business. It was an HR consulting firm. Big name clients like KPMG, Ally Bank, BDO. You would have thought from the outside looking in, wow, this business looks great. It's doing so well. She's getting published in articles and, you know, articles published in major publications. And she's got all these big name clients. But like most small business owners and most people who go out to start a business because they're good at something, not because, you know, they just can't wait to be that always hustling salesperson running their own business, but they're really good at being the attorney or the CPA, right? And in my case, when it was an HR consulting firm, it was employee engagement and generational diversity. And then we get out there and we're like, oh, yeah, there's this thing called sales and people coming in the door and the filling up the pipeline or the funnel or, you know, there's all these things that we learn about. And for me, it was really like when I looked back on when my business failed, it was just over 4 years. When I looked back on all the clients I did bring in, I realized not one came through referral. And that meant I spent entirely too much time hustling for every client that did come in the door. And as a mom of 3 kids, and then when I was starting my first business, like I think my oldest was actually like 4 months old, like when they were babies. It's crazy to kind of think about it from that perspective of realizing, wow, my business grew from the hardest way possible because I didn't have a strategy or system in place that allowed it to grow easier. And so when I looked back on that business failure, I'm like, okay, so why did I fail and why are other people successful? And I realized I didn't have any referrals. My first business, that HR firm, had no referrals. And I was like, okay, I went back to corporate America, right? Got to get over the ego bruising that you feel when you lose a business or, you know, your business fails. I got a job. And then I started paying attention to what do I need to do different because I'm planning my exit strategy. And when I get out of here, what is it going to look like differently? And the truth is, when I looked at that business, I was like, okay, I got to figure out this referral piece. So like everybody else, I went to the all-knowing Google and I'm like, Google, just tell me how I get referrals. And all the advice, like 99.9% of the advice was, oh, just go ask for it. And then it was even more dangerous. It'd be like, just go ask for it. And by the way, if you're not willing to ask for it, well, then you don't deserve any and you won't get any. And that was the reoccurring theme. And I think
So Stacey,
yeah,
with that thought process, sometimes it's so awkward, right? And so difficult and hard for some people to ask a stranger, for example, for a referral, or
yeah.
they don't know how to ask. And because of that initial roadblock, it never happens. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's the biggest hurdle I see people having. And of course, that's not the way to get referrals.
Right. So you're right. Some people are like, asking sounds horrible. I refuse to do it. And they never try it. But just as many people who decide, okay, fine, I'll try it, then they realize this was awful and awkward and terrible, and I never want to do it again. And what I have found is that there's not a way for those folks to learn how to generate referrals. And I do think one of the superpowers that God gave me is my ability to reverse engineer how things should work and how they work, and how it's best for me to reverse engineer them for myself, and then how I teach them to folks. And so I started with the end in mind. I'm like, okay, so why do referrals arrive? Like, why do we want them? Why are they so awesome? And what is typically making them happen? And really, when you look at the human dynamic and the psychology behind why somebody refers someone to your law firm, it actually has nothing to do with you. Now I know that's like a major ego blow.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I know I'm like striking at the ego, right? But the truth is, when somebody actually gives a referral, and when I mean referral, I mean they put their reputation on the line to connect someone with you and say, yes, hire Mitch. He will be the best attorney for you, right? So they put their reputation on the line and they connect you. And the person they're connecting you with knows, oh, yes, I need an attorney, not, oh, I think we're just going to go meet for coffee and talk about our childhoods. Like, it's that referral that shows up that's quicker to close, easier to close, less price sensitive. They're like, here, take my money, solve my problem. When that type of prospect, that referred prospect shows up, that's the piece where people are like, well, it's about me. I'm like, no. You're the solution provider and you're necessary into the process, but you're not at the top of the triangle. And the three cast of characters and the way that they're positioned within the referral process is your referral source is at the top, and they're going to connect the prospect to you as a solution provider. But why that referral source is connecting that prospect to you is because in that moment, they get to be the hero to the prospect. Hey, you've got a problem. I know exactly how to help you solve it. I get to be the hero when I refer someone to you, not because I'm helping you grow your business, which is a nice benefit, but because I've got somebody else that needs what you can do. And I'm going to help them, right? And I'm going to help them by connecting them with you. And so asking completely makes it about me, when a referral is actually never about me, which is why when you ask somebody for a referral, they start shifting uncomfortably in their chair. They start wrapping up the meeting, whether it's virtual now or if it was in person, it doesn't matter. And you'll say, hey, do you have anybody you could refer to me? And they'll say, let me think about that. Let me get back to you on that. And then we know 9.9% of the time out of 10, 9.9 out of 10 times, they never actually get back to us because we're trying to artificially create and manufacture something that doesn't actually exist.
So let me ask you a question. So
Yep.
I know, looking at your blog, I've been checking out your website, and you build the referral process and relationship around relationships, right? Mm-hmm. And so how can people watching this show, how can they tap into your process to allow themselves to be the hero? And how do they even get on your radar? Because first you have to have a relationship. They have to know about you, Stacey, before I can refer business to you. Right? Either directly or indirectly. And how can you teach me the hero approach through relationships so that I'm empowered to make that relationship, to you? There's got to be some steps that we can walk our way through, I'm guessing.
Yes. Well, that is what happens when you reverse engineer everything, right? There are steps and processes to everything. It's also the only way to make sure we actually do it, right? We actually ultimately end up doing the work, as we need a process, we need a plan to follow. And I always tell folks, listen, the first thing you need to do in your business is look at who currently refers you. Whether you are a solo attorney and it's just you and a paralegal and an assistant, or you have partners in your firm, look at who is referred to you personally. And I would say that if you have other partners in the firm, or even a business development person, that who is referring to them, because a referral source plan, that this referral plan you would ultimately end up building, it is based on the relationship that I have with you. And so there's always somebody in the firm that's going to have that tighter relationship with certain referral sources and things like that. And so it's really important that you look at, okay, who's referring me and how often are they referring me and who have they referred to me? And looking at it from that perspective of identifying first, who are your referral sources? Most people come to me and they're like, okay, I need to get more referrals. Tell me what to do. And I always say the what you do for your referral sources is actually irrelevant and not the right first question until you can answer the first question, which is who are your referral sources? Because what I do to be able to generate more referrals from my referral sources is dependent on who they are, right? And it's paying attention to who they are. And then, of course, how well or how strong of a relationship we have and how well I take care of them. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, most people are like, okay, there's steps, there's got to be a strategy, right? There's got to be the secret sauce. There's got to be all these pieces to it. And I'm like, yes, there are some pieces and parts to it, and there is a piece of secret sauce. But at the end of the day, what we're ultimately doing is we are creating a plan of how we are going to take care of the people who take care of our business by referring people to us, right? And it's no different than looking at it. So I'll use one of the attorneys that's actually in my program. Her name's Catherine. And she looked at how her referral sources, who they were, and she was paying attention in the very beginning before she started my program. And she looked back in her data and she was like, I get about 3 or 4, maybe 5 referrals a year. So we identified who those people were. And then, so she had to do 2 things. She had to take care of those people to get more referrals and learn how to turn people into referral sources so that they would start referring her. And ultimately, in her first year, she hit like 20 referrals received. And then her second year, she continued to follow the process and she got to 40 referrals received. So it's that growth pattern of looking at it from the perspective of who's referring you now, and then creating a process and a plan. We call it touch points, but outreach that you're going to do to your referral sources of how you're going to take care of them, which gives you the opportunity to plant the right language. The referral seed language is what we call it. It gives you the opportunity to plant the referral seed language so that you can continue to deepen and strengthen that relationship by having them think about you as well from a subconscious perspective, from a referral perspective in that way. But ultimately also learning like, hey, you just landed the best client you've ever had, and you would really love for them to refer people to you just like them. What's the strategy you follow to turn somebody into a referral source? And most people that I find that come into my program, and I have a large number of attorneys that are in the program, is that's typically what they need. It's not just, hey, I've got some referral sources and I want to get more referrals from them. It's also, I've got these other people that I wish were referring me, and I need to turn them into referral sources. And when I can get both of those mechanisms, right, moving in the right direction like a well-oiled machine, that's when I start seeing the growth of people experiencing referrals coming into their business. I've got another attorney in the program who at the end of 2020 created her 7th referral plan. So 2021 was the 7th year she had created her referral strategy for the entire year. And she consistently receives over 40 referrals a year. Like we kind of grew her into that. And last year she got the most in 2020 that she's ever received before, which is 47. And she's a personal injury attorney. And so, at 47, when she doesn't need 47 cases in a year, she can't take that many clients. She gets to be really picky and choosy about who she does work with. But
that's the kind of problem all lawyers want, by the way.
Every single, right. It doesn't matter what your number is. You just want more than you can handle. So you can say yes and no, right? You get to pick and choose. And so, and her name's Amanda, and she always explains it from this perspective of, this is a way that I run my practice, right? Like there was an intellectual property attorney who started working about a year and a half ago in the program. And in his first year, he got 40 something referrals. And he was like, I can see how this is a strategy that I'm now deploying, just like if I were to do paid leads, right? Or just like I were to do social media, or if I were to put an ad in the yellow pages, which nobody does anymore, right? It's the same type of strategy. It's one, you though have to be willing to work, and you have to recognize that it starts with relationships and it ends with relationships. So your ability to nurture those and take care of the people who take care of your business, you've got to be willing to invest the time in to do that.
It sounds like a strategy that we've always implemented. And one of the reasons, Stacey, is that when someone's referred to our firm, they've already been sold on us. They want us to take their case as opposed to us, we having to sell ourselves to the potential client. Maybe talk to the audience a little bit about why referrals, what the power behind that dynamic as opposed to placing a paid ad someplace. I think it's so important, especially for professionals, whether you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a CPA. And by the way, everybody, I've got your questions. I'll try to squeeze them in. Stacey's covering a lot of material real fast, so I'm trying to keep up, you guys, but it's all good. And I see you. And by the end of the show, everyone, I'll share links where you can connect with Stacey if we don't have time to get to your questions. But the power of referrals, why is it so much better than paid advertising?
Yes. And of course, I may be Southern, but I talk really fast too. So we're just,
I love it. It's
jam
great.
in
It's
as much
great.
stuff as we can.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, what's really interesting when people talk about referrals, we kind of all know the why we like them because they show up, right? They're already they're connected to us from that perspective, right? They're connected to us. They know that, hey, you're the right person for me. And that reason why referred prospects are so much more valuable is because they show up quicker to close and easier to close for one key reason first. And that is somebody else is basically handing them the trust they have in you and saying, here's my trust in Mitch. Now I'm giving it to you so you can go hire Mitch. And it's that trust that's transferred from the referral source to the prospect that is golden in terms of their ability, right, to show up and be like, Mitch, just take my money. Here, I will sign your LOA. Just let's make this happen. Let's get going. Because they already trust us. They show up and they're already like, okay, I know I need this. And if I need this, right, from that perspective, I want to do two things when I'm making a buying decision. No matter if I'm buying you as my attorney or I'm buying the person who's going to put a new roof on my house. I want to do two things every time I make a purchasing decision. Number one is I do not want to waste my money. And number two is I do not want to make a mistake. And typically, right, what overcomes us feeling like we're going to make a mistake or waste our money is somebody else's recommendation. And what a referral has more than anything is your recommendation wrapped up into your reputation. It's like you're willing to put your reputation on the line for somebody else, right? So that they understand, okay, right? I'm putting my reputation on the line because I trust Mitch that much. I trust Joey that much that I'm willing to put my reputation on the line to connect them with somebody else that I know that needs them. But here's the other missing piece that I think some people overlook, and it's just as powerful as that trust transferred. And that's the prospect knowing they're a prospect. And the need has been identified. I can't show up and say, Mitch, take my case if I don't actually know I need an attorney. Now, I think in your industry, this is a little bit easier for folks to recognize that, yes, I ultimately need an attorney in this situation, whether it is I'm incorporating my business or I need you to get me out of a speeding ticket, right? Whatever it is, we kind of know that's the need, but it's not that way in all industries, right? Some people actually, you have to know that when a referral shows up, that person is considering hiring you. And that coupled with the trust transferred coming in from the prospect is ultimately what we're looking for. And that is what makes a referred prospect better than any other type of prospect you're going to receive. Now, with that being said, I do want to be fair and say, I also think you need to have strategies in your business of how you grow, right? How do you fill your prospecting pipeline? And if it's all from referrals, great. I mean, that's my goal, is to be the biggest piece of the pie of how anybody who goes through my program grows their business. But that doesn't mean there aren't other strategies, marketing and prospecting, that are important as well, because they are. I just want you to make sure that your ROI is coming out of what you're ultimately looking for. And typically the ROI on a referred prospect is going to be better than on any other type.
So just kind of unpacking a couple of things that you said, and I don't want to interrupt by jumping in, but I think what I'm hearing is, as attorneys, as professionals, we need to identify who our best referral sources are.
Yes.
Our target market to get referrals, and it may not be who you think it is. And so Stacey's sharing some ideas on how we can actually figure out who are your best referral sources. It may not be who you're getting referrals from right now. You might be able to expand your target market. And number two, just because somebody thinks they may need a lawyer doesn't mean they're equipped. Someone's a referral source and they're being approached by someone who needs a lawyer. You want to share with your referral source different ways they can communicate the importance of why they actually do need a lawyer. In other words, just because somebody needs a lawyer doesn't mean they're going to take that next step. Why do they need a lawyer? What's the downside? What are the problems if they don't take care of this right now? If they allow this to fester over the next couple of months, how much worse is it going to get? So Stacey, I guess what I'm thinking is if we can train our referral sources with talking points, with an elevator speech, with a Ryan Foland's 313 approach to speaking, so that when they communicate to that third party why it's so important to have a lawyer involved right now, I think that would kind of help or facilitate in the whole referral process.
So here's the thing.
That makes sense.
We all want our referral sources to know how to set us up correctly when they're referring someone to us, right? But here's the rub.
I heard a but there.
But the rub is no one wants to be trained on how to do that. And I think that is a fascinating dynamic between people who refer us and those that set us up really well and those that don't. And what I have found when I'm working with my clients that are in my program and they've identified people that they want to refer them, or they've identified people who refer them and it's just not the right quality. They're like, oh, this is not, I'm always having to refer this out. I'm always having to, send this person to someone else because I can't help them. Typically, it does start with a conversation you're going to have with your referral source. But I think what we do wrong in those situations is how we're approaching the conversation. And how we approach the conversation is exactly the same language you used. I want to train my referral source on how to know how to refer me. And ultimately, when I hear it like that, right?
Yeah, I didn't say it very well. Yeah, I didn't say it very well.
But you're not wrong. But you're not wrong in terms of that's how everybody talks about it. And what I always try to tell folks, and then the next piece is what you said, right? I'm going to remember how best to refer you based on how you tell me you've helped other clients. It's the stories you tell, right, that help me understand who best you can work with. And so that's some of the advice I'll always give folks is that if someone's not sending you the right type of client, then definitely knowing how to have a conversation with them so they don't get defensive, right? And they don't all of a sudden feel like, oh, I've done wrong of who I've sent you in the past is a special language that we use, but it all comes down to at the very end of that ability to help them understand where you do your best work and who you do that for, but in a way that makes them understand and feel as if every referral they've sent you is fine. I mean, you don't say it like that because obviously it isn't, but that there's nothing wrong with the fact that you couldn't help somebody, but that here's where you're able to really help people and really do your best work. And not getting the quality of referrals that we want or quality referred prospects that we want is a big deal. I mean, some people in my program, it's a matter of I'm getting enough referrals. I'm not closing enough. Well, sometimes it's, are you getting the right quality? And other times, do you even know how to close a referred prospect? Because you close that completely differently than how you close somebody who comes through your internet contact me form. And so it looks different. There's all these nuances when it comes to referrals as well. But as you said, hands down, the number one way we should be considering kind of growing our practice is making sure we have a well-executed referral plan. And it all comes down to relationships. And I think in our busy go world, right? It's the one thing we're more likely to overlook is actually investing in those relationships that, to be honest, will pay us huge dividends over time. But that work we're going to do to cultivate that is going to look different.
Can I just bring in a couple of questions coming in from text real quick? It's related to what we're talking about on this particular topic. So we identify our target market. We approach it the right way where they know what type of cases that we can help their friends or referrals with and what really works for the firm. I guess the better you get to know somebody, the more specific you can be. Like, Stacey, quit referring me traffic ticket cases. That's not what we do. I don't have anyone I can refer those out to. I hate saying no. Is there a way that you recommend that once these referrals start coming in, and I'm paraphrasing a couple of different questions, that as lawyers, as professionals, we can keep track of our referral sources, have a touch with them 3 or 4 times a year? How do you recommend we manage our referral sources? We let them know that they're appreciated. We stay top of mind in front of them. Or is there software approaches, landing pages, a way to set up our websites, phone calls? I mean, what are your thoughts, especially with the professional industry? Good question.
So the number one thing that I would say is simplify it.
Okay.
What we sometimes do when we're thinking about taking care of our referral sources is that we complicate it to the point to where we're so busy we don't even remember what system or process we've put in place, right? And so I always tell folks this is a solid list of people you have identified that have referred you. And I talk about it in my book in chapter 8. I break down exactly how you go about identifying who your referral sources are. In my book is
what's the name? I was going to say, what's the name of your book?
Yeah, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. And so I break down exactly how to identify who your referral sources really are. And then from there, right, if you have a client management system, I want them in that client management, that CRM, whatever your client management system is, whatever it looks like, I want your referral sources in there. And if you don't have a database and you don't have a CRM and you can't track it in like whatever you're using with Clio or anything else to track, that's fine. Give me an Excel spreadsheet. Keep it simple, but I want a list to really understand, okay, who are my referral sources? And then ultimately what we're going to do is build a plan that's going to allow us to do outreach to them. And it's actually going to be 6 to 8 times a year But the what we do is so very different. It is not your e-newsletter. It is not a 62-day phone call every 62 days to say, hey, how's it going? Hadn't talked to you in a while, right? And those conversations become very stale very quickly. We want to be memorable and meaningful, and we want to make sure that we're staying top of mind. But we're doing it because we are appreciative of the fact that these people help our firm grow the easiest and best way possible, which is by referring people to us, that they put their reputation on the line, that they trust us, and that we don't let that go unrecognized, and we appreciate it. And then, of course, giving us the opportunity to use our referral seed language so that there's the ability for them to refer, to continue to think about us from a referral perspective. When I teach my overall system and process to my students, they're always just kind of like, okay, wait, is that it? Like, there is a little bit of like, wait a minute, that's really simple. I'm like, it is simple, because that's what Albert Einstein said, right? He said, keep it simple, stupid. Or maybe he didn't say it, but I like to say he said it, right? But at the end of the day, it is about keeping it simple. It's about, who are your referral sources? What are you going to do to take care of them? What language are you going to use to nurture a referral mentality within them? And then how are you going to execute on it? There are pieces and parts of a referral strategy that can be handed off to somebody else in your firm to do. Like, I know we've got Joey on with us today, and he's got somebody in his office that's actually going through my program, piecing it together for what it's going to look like. There'll be parts and pieces Joey has to do, right? But there'll be other parts that his team can do for him. And so it's looking at the, who is it for? What are we building? Making sure we're hitting the important pieces there, and then the execution of it. But to your point, the tracking of who is referring us, like when those prospects come in, knowing if they're referred or not and who they were referred by, I need that tracked. Like, that is data that is golden, of course. And then also making sure you've got a list of who your referral sources are as well. And that's another important one too, is like the list of referral sources and who they're referring, and then how you're going to take care of them.
One thing, Stacey, that we've always done is, and you brought this up, but I think it's really important, and please expand upon it, or anything I say, correct anything I say. I'm so over my head on this show. This is so much fun. I love it. I love it, you guys. Is, let's say we have 20 primary major valuable referral sources over the last 30 years. It's just the same. These 20 sources are just amazing, right? Judges in town, lawyers in town, claims adjusters. One thing we've always done is, in our database, and I picked this up from, I think, Mark McCormick back in the day, is we have sections in our database where spouse names, children's names, hobbies, interests, passions. I really want to get to know who our clients are and who our referral sources are. So what we do is we'll use, for example, BombBomb, which is a video email tool, right? And I'll just shoot a BombBomb to Stacey and say, Stacey, just was thinking of you the other day, 3 kids, your hands are full, my 2 kids that are grown. Oh my goodness, if you ever want to talk, let's just touch base. Hope you're doing well. Just watched the new movie on Netflix. I know you're interested in running, and so I wanted to get this over to you because it profiles this great runner, out of Europe. And just something like that. I'm not asking for business. I'm not asking for more referrals. What I'm doing is touching base, and I'm continuing to build a relationship. Talk a little bit about that. And while you do, Joey also, and I think for probably good reason, asked a good question, or asked if you could expand a little bit on what's a quote unquote referral and what's actually not a referral. Good question, Joey.
Yeah, that's great, because people do confuse those a lot. So, let me go back to what you said first, and then I'll answer Joey's question.
Thank you.
I think from that perspective of what it ultimately looks like in terms of how you connect with your referral sources, I want you to build a planned approach where we know what our, some between 4 and 8, though most people fall, as I said, between 6 and 8 touch points a year. I want to know what those look like. But that's not to say that you can't, because something pops into your head because you're watching a documentary on a runner and you reach out to me and you are like, hey, I just wanted to say, hey, I thought about you. I watched this running documentary, which, by the way, Mitch, you would never think of me in running because I think it's the devil's work. I don't know why anybody ever runs, right? I mean,
what do you enjoy doing when you're not working or being a mom and wife?
Sleeping. I mean, what else
besides
is
sleeping?
there?
Come on, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you enjoy doing?
I'm actually a reader. I'm a reader.
A reader. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I read a lot of really great books. But couldn't you incorporate that touch point into one of those 8 instances? So Absolutely. It's not random. It's just personalized.
Right. So I want them to be like, I want you to know what you're doing. And if one of them is to send a personalized video like that, I'm all about it. That actually became a driving force last year during when COVID started. And I was
Okay.
helping my clients within the program shift what their touch points would look like because we weren't doing coffee. We weren't going to events. We weren't doing any of that stuff. It was like in some cases, we needed to keep doing the same touch points, but shift the messaging. In other cases, it was like, we got to shift how we're delivering the touch point in addition to the messaging. So video became big. But again, like I have a client who's, in Costa Rica, is actually an attorney in Costa Rica, and like mail is unreliable there. So a lot of times what she'll do is the video piece versus anything else. So whereas I want your touch points to be like, here's what the touch points look like, right? From that perspective, I also want you to have flexibility to when you have that moment of walking that documentary, right? On the 100 best business books of all time, then you reach out to me and say, Stacey, oh my gosh, have you seen this? Right? So I always tell folks what we're building is a plan you follow, but that doesn't mean I don't want you to use opportunities to take care of people when the need also arises or something triggers it for you. So I think what you brought up is a really good point. I want it to be a system, but I want you to have flexibility to also know when to lean into somebody because maybe they need it or something triggered it for you from that perspective.
It's interesting. I'm looking, and I want to respect your time. We're going to try to get you out of here in about 5 or 6 minutes, everyone. And so I'll paraphrase a couple of questions. Before we do, let me just come back to Joey's thoughts or comments, maybe distinguish between what a real referral is.
Yeah. So here's the thing that people always seem to get incorrect. And I'll hear things like word of mouth referral, right? Or you'll hear things like, I got a referral, but actually it was an introduction. And I think what people confuse, because it is commonplace, unfortunately, to use these terms interchangeably, that referral is very different from word of mouth buzz, which is very different from introductions and which is very different from a warm lead. And so a referral has what we kind of talked about earlier, always a personal connection and always a need identified. Word of mouth buzz is me telling my neighbor that you're the best attorney I know and they should definitely hire you, and then giving them your name and number, and fingers crossed, hopefully they'll call and follow up. I'm talking about you. I've identified a need in my neighbor, but I never connected them to you, which means I didn't put you in the driver's seat to be able to follow up. If in an easy way of connecting you, right? Because you guys can't even follow up. Like you need somebody to connect you guys.
Right.
And so word of mouth buzz is great, but it is not a referral. And so it's really important to understand that. Like, what do I say to my neighbor when they say, or what I say to my client when they say they talk to their neighbor about me? The language you use to flip that into a referral is really important. The same thing when somebody sends you an email and connects you to somebody else, but doesn't say why the heck they're connecting you. And you're like, okay, are we just going to meet for virtual coffee? Or actually, do you need an attorney? And it just wasn't stated because the need wasn't identified, but the connection was there. And that's where people kind of mess up in terms of understanding a referral has two things that word of mouth buzz, introduction, or warm lead don't have, which is always personally connected along with that need identified. And when you can start identifying referrals as they come into your firm and you can start identifying them in that way, there's that immediate of, I know exactly how to respond. And I know exactly what closing ratio I should have as well, based on the fact that they're my referred prospects.
Stacey, in the last couple of minutes, we have a couple of questions that revolve around, can I just ask for a referral? But the questions have more to do with, generally speaking, at the end of a case, once we have a satisfied client, maybe talk about the dynamics at that time where the client's happy, they've got a check in their hand, they get to move forward with their life like in an injury or death case, and that's the way the cases wrap up. How important is it with respect to timing, with respect to planting that initial referral seed to a satisfied client before they walk out the door? What tools can we give them? What should we be thinking as lawyers, as doctors, as CPAs at that point of really a new referral source leaving the office as a satisfied client?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting because there are those questions that pop up, right? Like he or she asks, is there ever proper to just ask for a referral? And is there a timing and a place to do it? And here's what I always say. This is always my answer. You are a grown adult. And so you get to make that decision if you want to ask for that referral and it works for you, and you A, receive referrals back, and B, they are quality. And so you are closing more of them than you're not, then maybe there is a strategy and a system within your ask that is working for you. But here's what the psychology is doing if it doesn't work. And the reality is that's what we have to pay attention to, is what position did we just put that client in that moment when we ask them for a referral. And so the reality is at that moment when I ask you for a referral, I'm asking you to do work for me. And in some cases, because we position it at the end of a meeting when you got that big check in hand, right? Or your business now has an LLC and you're not going to get in trouble with the state or the federal government anymore, right? When we ask in those moments for a referral, it's as if we're saying, I did a great job, and so now you owe me. No, they don't. They owe you payment. They owe you payment for, or whether you worked on it, you got a cut of what the jury said that you get, like whether yours comes from a cut of that or whether they paid you because they signed a letter of agreement and here's what the billable rate was going to be. They owe you payment for a job well done. Nobody owes you a referral for a job well done. And what people don't realize is how when you ask me for a referral at the end of working with you, that's how I see it typically. That's how our clients see it, is it's feeling like, oh, there's something else I owe you. And then you know what you do? You crush the feeling of euphoria of like, this was a great experience, to all of a sudden, wait, I got to give you my friend's name.
So what if the client says, hey, Mitch, what can I ever do to help you? How can I tell other people about your firm? That's kind of where my mind was, because once again, we only have 1 or 2 more minutes, you guys. And before you answer that question, Stacey, how can everyone who's listening to the podcast version of this next week, how can everyone reach out and touch base with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my home base is StaceyBrownRandall.com. The podcast is Roadmap to Grow Your Business, if you're a podcast listener. And then, of course, the book is Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. One of those 3 places is typically the best place to start. Now, Mitch, you ask a really important question of like, when you get asked the help question, I do want you to be prepared to answer it. What I don't want you to do is force it. I don't want you to they didn't ask me if they could help me, so let me figure out if I can force it into the conversation. But if someone's talking to you and they're like, hey, I really appreciate this, how can I help you? It's okay for you to say, right? It's in those moments for you to talk about who best you can serve and how you can help. It's also okay for you to be like, hey, being able to take care of you is exactly what I'm looking to do. And you not ask for any type of help from that, because we know that if we continue to maintain that relationship correctly, planting referral seeds, that they're already in a state of mind of thinking about how they'll try to make it up to us, so to speak. So if the question of how can I help you is asked, it's okay to be prepared to answer it. But what I always say is, are you sure they meant it? So a client asking you, hey, how can I help you? And it's at the end of a conversation and a relationship and you feel like they mean it, then be able to answer it. But I will also say, if we're having coffee together and we don't really know each other, and at the end I'm like, hey, by the way, let me know how I can help you as I'm walking out the door. I mean, let's be honest, I don't really mean it. Right now, of course,
at this point, I'd be happy just to have a cup of coffee with someone, right?
Right. I mean, that's so true. Right. And my Southern roots won't let me just walk out the door and be like, hey, let me know if I can help you, and not mean it. Like, oh my gosh, my mother would shoot me. But the reality of it is that it's also knowing, how do they intend the question to be asked? And a lot of this has to do with discernment and how you have some emotional intelligence of how you can read other people in that moment. So again, I always tell folks, if someone says, hey, you've been a huge help to me, how can I help you? Right? It's okay to be prepared to answer that question, but just make sure you understand the context in which that question is coming from and if they really mean it.
This has been fantastic. Stacey Brown Randall, how to get referrals without asking for them. My name is Mitch Jackson. This is Human.Social. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Stacey, thanks for being on today's show and sharing so much value in such a short period of time. Really appreciate you. And hopefully everyone will be coming over and figuring out how to get referrals using your techniques in 2021 and beyond. You guys take care. Make it a masterpiece. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.